Welcome to the Creator's Crypt, where creatives from a wide range of genres will share secrets, drop hacks, and give us just a little bit of insight into their industry. This week's guests are Sean and Patrick Johnson of Swazzle. Swazzle's a company that creates puppets for productions like Crank Yankers and Showtime's Kidding, and numerous other projects. So Sean and Patrick, welcome to the Creator's Crypt.
Long before we had any chance of even working at Jim Henson's Creature Shop, we toured it. Dave Barkley, who was a puppet builder, he's worked there many years, done a ton of projects with them. And now we've since worked with him on puppeteering projects. Usually Muppet sets will show up and he'll be there. But he was working there, and we knew him because we had a mutual friend through the San Francisco Bay Area Puppeteers Guild.
But I was going to say one place that we got to tour was a friend of ours was sculpting on James and the Giant Peach.
Right.
So this was in San Francisco. Yeah, Skellington Productions, which of course Nightmare Before Christmas. It was directed by Henry Selick, Tim Burton, right? Mm-hmm. And so she's like, "Oh, do you guys want to see the studio?" We're like, "Yeah." So we drove. Our dad drove us out to San Francisco. Went to some anonymous building under the Bay Bridge, and went through a side door. And here was the world of James and the Giant Peach. And they had the stop motion shooting stages all set up. They had the workbenches. They had the molding department, sculpting, like all of it. And what was really cool is we were there at a time where Nightmare had just essentially wrapped production.
Oh, wow.
So they had Jack Skellington, the big hill, the curly hill was mounted up on the wall. They had figures up and around. So that was sort of amazing, obviously. But what was really interesting is seeing the workstations,
right?
Seeing the tools that people had, seeing how it was set up and established, and it kind of makes it real and concrete. You go, oh yeah, okay, scissors, X-Actos, like okay.
And you know this because I'm sure you were a fan of all the behind the scenes. Magazines and books, and Cinefex magazine when it used to not just be about
Fangoria,
Fangoria and all that stuff. And we know this now, but we didn't know it at the time. Every photo, generally, that was being shown in those things was someone posed next to a finished thing, holding a tool next to something that was done.
Yeah, they're all staged photos.
So, but to actually see things in process is a rare opportunity, and I think it kind of pulls the veil away.
And this is, us being able to tour the shop. There were no DVDs.
Right.
There were no behind the scenes. There were no extras. There was no YouTube. There was no Google.
Exactly.
There was none of it. If you wanted to
That's how we're saying we're old. We're old. That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
No.
I remember looking at Fangoria magazines with a magnifying glass.
Yes, right.
I was casing a joint for a robbery, I mean, you're trying to find every little detail.
Yeah. But there was, we grew up at a time when if you wanted to know something, you had to go somewhere and meet someone.
Right.
And that gave us a foundation that I think a lot of people coming up are struggling with because they're assuming all the best information is just all you have to do is just mash the right button and boom, it appears. But the truth is puppetry is it is a relationship industry. And if you truly want to be involved, you need to form those relationships. And one way to do it, meet people, tour shops, meet puppeteers. I mean, maybe other industries work differently, but I just know that more often than not, we've appeared on a set and been like, hey, by the time we finally made our way to a Muppet set, we had met Dave Goelz years earlier because we invited him to speak at the Puppeteers Guild. We had seen Bill Beretta at all of the Puppet Up classes. Many of the Henson puppeteers were there. So it wasn't like, what are you guys doing here? It's like, hey, you're here.
But on the other end, we also knew people from the workshop. We knew Jane Gutnick and Scott Johnson because of our time passing through the Creature Shop. So we like to recommend...
Speaking of building puppets.
We'll get there. The one thing we like to recommend to people is another foundational thing is don't be afraid to be bad.
That's something that the Creature Shop Challenge did a disservice to the builders.
Your words, not mine.
It did a disservice to the builders because it would showcase the bad moments.
Yeah.
Right? This is reality TV. You want it to be entertaining. You're showcasing the bad moments. But the truth is, puppet building is a series of mistakes you make until you have a final product.
Yeah.
You're always making mistakes all
Yeah.
along the way. And your career is made of mistakes that you are making step by step by step by step until you get to your destination.
What happens now with so much emphasis on people being know-it-alls online, social media. We're know-it-alls on social media, you know.
We're experts, of course.
Yeah, everyone's an expert on social
We have
media.
a website.
But what happens is all your worst work is now being put out for everybody to see. So the nice thing is when we were doing our worst work, where were we doing it? At the Millbrae Library. We were doing it at
Day camps.
Day camps in San Leandro.
In front of 6-year-olds. Who
Yeah.
cares?
Yeah.
So we had enough. It's almost like that our version of working little tiny nightclubs before you get your big television sitcom. Now everyone's worst work is like for all to see, which is good. But our feeling is don't be afraid to be bad and find somewhere where you can be bad.
Yeah,
because you can't be good unless you're first bad.
Yeah, like when we were taking animation classes, our animation instructor always told us that everyone has you know, a 10,000 bad pencil tests in them. Better to get them out early.
Yeah.
You know, all puppet builders have hundreds of bad puppets in them. You got to get through them. You got to get through them until you start getting to the good ones.
Yeah. And so I know that if we had social media at the time, I mean, it would have been
a nightmare.
Yeah, it would have been terrible. We would
because our early puppets, we were using, you know, meat trays for mouths and, you know, ping pong balls for eyes and whatever we can get our hands on. And
not that anyone should be afraid to share that work, but it's also too bad because I feel like people maybe kind of stunts their creative growth because they're sort of like embarrassed and ashamed right away instead of letting that happen in the development stage. It's like you're becoming a butterfly. You would never cut open the chrysalis and go, "What's in here now?"
Just ooze would come out.
Yeah,
because of this social media thing, people feel the pressure to be a professional before they're ready, and so they're the expert on whatever topic it is. And I'm just glad that we got to fail in anonymity and without having to fail in public.
Yeah.
Which was basically the Jim Henson Creature Shop Challenge. Millions of people watching you fail as this thing is falling apart because you only have 2 days.
But we felt for you as an audience, though. Like, so Sean got to be a part of the show. I was just watching the show as an audience member, and my wife and I, we loved the show, and we felt for all of the builders. When I mentioned I'm talking to today, she remembers you from the show. She's like, "Oh,
no way!"
I remember Russ from the show." Yeah, because you guys made an impression. Not just because of the moments that were maybe hard to watch or hard to experience, but it was human. It's a human experience. We all can. Who can't identify with that?
Right. And truthfully, puppet building is failing upstairs, and that's all you're doing. You're getting to the top of the stairs, making little failures along the way.
Yeah, exactly.
But all you're doing is you're trying something, you're fixing it. You're trying it, you're fixing it. You're trying it, you're fixing it. You're trying it, you're fixing it. And like we said, whatever hits the screen is a prototype. That Yoda in Empire Strikes Back, there's a reason why George Lucas went and did it completely different in Episode 1. He's like, okay, we're not doing that again.
On top of that, he did it completely different in Return of the Jedi.
And then
Return
of the Jedi. And then he went back and made it all digital. He's like, okay, never mind. All of those prototypes didn't work. Now, this is the final image.
Definitely.
So the way we build puppets.
Foam.
So most of our materials are Scott foam, which is a porous which is used for outdoor furniture. It's the classic thing.
We like to say that there's no actual puppet building materials, so everything is a puppet building material.
Yeah, and then we also use a lot of L200 for large structure stuff.
High density foam.
Yeah, good. Yeah, which is closed cell foam. Great for structural elements that don't require a lot of movement. It's very lightweight, good for walk around heads and such like that.
Like often when we made things for like kitting, we made this giant foot for kitting, and they're like, okay, we need to reposition this over here, and the crew members are going to be like, well, I don't know how heavy this thing is.
I haven't lifted this thing yet. We'll see.
They go, oh my gosh, it's lighter than I thought. Where do you want it? Yeah. We can put it anywhere.
We're always used to, and then the big puppet building material that we use all the time is fleece, which is there was many iterations of fleece over the years. Antron fleece was the old version. Sometimes people call it Muppet fleece. We call it puppet fleece now because there's so many iterations of what it is now. But basically, it's the covering, It's a material that comes white and can be dyed any material. This is some right here. This is just for a project we're working on, some white fleece. And you can use basically dyes you can buy at the store, RIT dyes or more professional quality dyes, and make it any color you want.
To be honest, we have lots of puppet building videos on our website, on our YouTube. People can check it out.
I love your YouTube stuff.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
But really, the best puppet building material is time.
Yeah.
Dedicate time to it. Log those hours. Make those mistakes. Try stuff out. Educate. Meet people. Nowadays there are so many great available resources. We have our YouTube, but also Adam Krudinger has his amazing YouTube.
Yeah, I know Adam. Yeah.
Yeah, and he shows how to build puppets of all shapes and sizes, and
it's like what you were saying, Russ, about starting with those basic shapes. Like, if I were to make any recommendation to any puppet builder out there, I would say, first of all, come up with a design, because otherwise you give yourself permission to go, that's not, I'll do this instead.
Yeah.
But if you're working towards a design, you kind of go, no, I actually do want the head to be that shape. How can I achieve that? Instead of just giving yourself a pass. And learn basic geometric shapes out of patterned sheet foam, or sometimes we'll use carved soft foam as well. If you need to build a puppet fast, a really great way to get some intricate shapes is using carved soft foam.
Yeah.
But I would say anyone starting out, get a design, start building some geometric shapes, and safety first. That's one thing that we would always recommend.
Yeah.
If you're using glues, work in a ventilated space, forced ventilation, wear a respirator, wear gloves. We're trying to minimize contact with any adhesives. We work by the open door. Sometimes we'll even have forced ventilation, even by that, if we're doing a lot of gluing. And read all the safety stuff, because those are things you don't want to mess around with.
Yeah, I mean, I keep telling people, it's like you see this childlike character, that is a puppet, but that thing is toxic. Like, to build, it's toxic as hell.
There's as much petroleum in that as there is in your tires. I mean, it's like,
I wouldn't eat it.
I wouldn't eat it. Yeah, and barge cement, you gotta love barge, but I mean, it's nasty. And then the stuff. What is the stuff? There's a version of barge. It's in a blue label that has the stinky stuff taken out, and it's useless. It's garbage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have discovered that the worse it is for you, the better it works.
And that way, you just have to be safer.
You got to be safe. You got to take precautions.
And some people say, like, well, why not hot glue? Why not whatever? And the only reason why adhesives like barge, which are made for shoes, the reason why it's so good is it's designed to glue foam to leather to fabric, and also to rubber, and also survive and be flexible.
Exactly,
and
the flexibility.
In a thin layer. It's basically it's a contact cement, because it's made for shoes. Everything that is in a shoe is basically in a hand puppet.
And also, a shoe has a foot in it, and a foot gets sweaty
and hot,
and a puppet gets sweaty as well.
So it's made to withhold that.
It can withstand all of that. So
the one thing I wouldn't do is take it out in the sun, because heat, you can actually break the bond, and and I've had things like I've been trying to, I'll just put it out in the sun, kind of like help the drying process, and then you come back and everything is just opened right back up.
Yeah, especially a brand new something that's just been glued. Yeah, in fact, sometimes if we need to reactivate it, a hair dryer on.
Yeah,
it doesn't always open it right away, but at least it loosens it enough for you to get access to it and pull it apart.
Pulling apart old projects that no longer viable, you're like, well, I can cannibalize that, and you just take a heat gun and let the barge just relax. Yeah. In
fact, we have puppets now. Some friends of ours do an improv show with called GLOP, the Glorious Ladies of Puppetry, we know them through our work in Henson and whatever. And so they're doing a show in San Francisco, and so we provided a bunch of puppets for them. And now it's an opportunity for us to pull out old puppets of ours, pull all the fur off, pull the fleece off, and then for some of them we were taking the old foam apart, slicing it, repatterning it, making out of new foam, and rebuilding it.
Well, the funny thing is, when you pull apart an old puppet that was good when you made it, you realize, oh wow, I would never do it this way if I were to make it today.
Yeah.
So it's like a nice education, even when you were still professional. You can see all your past mistakes and go, oh.
In fact, as I was saying, when we first started building puppets, it was on our own. learning at the San Francisco Bay Area Puppeteers Guild at the festival, then going to Jim Henson's Creature Shop, learning from people across the bench. And then the next time we really learned about puppet building, believe it or not, was recently when we were building puppets for Crank Yankers. Right. Because we had an opportunity for the first time to build 15, 20 puppets that were all going to be used by professional puppeteers on set over the span of weeks of production, and they had to work and they had to be comfortable. So our first versions of those puppets had to be changed quite a lot until we actually came up with systems and techniques that we are now using, until eventually we learn the next thing and learn that what we're doing now is also wrong. So.
Well, and and then there's the aspect of, like, do you need backup puppets for every character, like the ones that are being used the most? I mean, if something happens, things break, something happens, and you guys are puppet builders, so I'm going to attack the side of you that is a puppeteer, but the worst thing you can do to a puppet is give it to a puppeteer. So, things break, so do you... Are there budgets in there that they have to have for backup puppets, copies?
So one of the benefits of being a puppeteer and a puppet builder is it makes us not precious about the actual puppet. Mm-hmm. Like, if the puppet gets a set and the puppeteer is like, we need to cut the back of the head open to do this. Okay, let's do it. Let's make this tool work for you. We don't come to set with velvet gloves and saying, okay, everyone have to be careful. I mean, you could be sensible about it, like don't drop it on the floor and don't handle it. But I am very tolerant of puppeteers breaking the puppet, especially if it's just to get the best performance. Yeah, because that's what they need to do to get the performance. You can always fix it with a needle and thread. I mean, on the day.
So the most important person on a puppet set is the person that most people don't hire. Yeah. And that is a puppet wrangler. Back in the old Muppet days, they used to call them puppet doctors. And basically, your hair, your makeup, you are wardrobe, your plastic surgeon for your lead character, for your puppet.
Oh, yeah.
Your first day. And so my feeling is we're lucky because we've always done both. I feel like if anyone wants to be a puppet builder, they ought to learn to puppeteer as well. You don't have to be like the best, but at least understand what it is that builder is. The puppet builder needs to know what the puppeteer does, and I think the best puppeteers also know what the builder does. If I was just a puppeteer, I would recommend someone sit down and build a puppet. That way, there's an understanding. There's no reason for it to be an adversarial thing. Yeah. My feeling about
put it this way: how good of a car mechanic would you be if you'd never driven a car?
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Get in the driver's seat once in a while and try it out.
Yeah.
And so, you don't have to be the best driver, but you at least have to understand what
at least know what pedals make it go.
Yeah.
And what the steering wheel does.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, it's true. And so,
it is.
The way we feel about it is it's also the puppeteer's job to break the puppet, because sometimes we think we know how it's going to be used and what it needs to do, but on the day it needs to do something that's like, oh, I guess that's what it's doing now. It's not like I can say, no, it can't do that. No, that's where the wrangler comes in. Once the puppet does do that and they get their shot and everyone's laughing and having a good time, we got it, and they have the mustard on the face or whatever it was. Yeah, good. And then it's the puppeteer's wrangler's job to go, okay, now we're just going to get this ready to go for the next one.
Yeah, I was just as, because on Crank Yankers we worked as puppeteers and builders. And I was just as unprecious with the puppet, even though I built some of them. I was like, careful. Yeah. I was just doing my best to bring the character to life, knowing that yes, they are expensive, but they're expensive tools, and they are tools, and they should be used.
Yeah. Puppeteers, every puppeteer should spend a day in a workshop and go, oh, got it. And I think every builder should spend a day on set and go, oh, got it.
You hear things like, oh, it's so heavy, and the builders go like, oh god, the puppeteers are complaining about how heavy it is.
Yeah, and that's a big thing too.
Heavy.
Yeah. I mean, you've got the weight that if you were just a builder and you didn't understand the puppetry, the puppeteer's side of things, that weight in your arm over time. I mean, hell, hold an orange out in front of you, and as it starts to get, oh my god! I mean, over time, and then some of the mechanisms in the puppet that you use to control. They can cramp your hand up if they're in awkward positions, or I mean, so.
But if I may posit a theory, I think the actual breakdown that happens between puppeteers and puppet builders isn't so much about the puppet; it's about the pay disparity. So, a puppet builder, maybe a good one gets 35 an hour. Let's just say it's 35 an hour, right? And they're in there working for 8 weeks on something, right? They bring it to set. The puppeteer, if it's a union show, they're getting $900 a day
Minimum.
That's SAG minimum. And they
Wow.
go, yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it's a little. And meanwhile, they don't know the puppet builders stayed up till 3 a.m. trying to make this thing work. So I think that might be part of the underlying
Animosity.
what might cause some of the animosity is a lot of the skilled builders know what the puppeteers make, and they waltz in. They're the peacocks on set.
Yeah, puppeteers look at the set for the script for the first time. What are we shooting today?
Yeah, they got
oh, that's the donkey. Cute. Yeah, I mean, a little heavy, but I can make it work.
It's just sort of weird. How come the mouth is... Yeah, it's just sort of like, I don't understand why... Can we... Just a question.
Yeah.
We're going soon, but just a question. Can we just shift it this way?
Yeah.
And the puppet builder's like, ah!
It's like that because the iMac is in there, and the client wanted a big eye, and you don't know that,
Yeah, exactly. You didn't design it.
I do think that if puppet builders were paid more for their time and they were paid what they're worth as far as their skill and talent, they'd be like, sure, I'll fix that.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm getting paid fairly for my time. So I feel like that is, plus also puppeteers have the benefit of a union protecting them when they're on set on professional shows, so they're SAG after a union. Whereas shops, I mean, some are non-union, most of them are not. So
some are union, you say.
Some are, some are not. But you're working under perhaps difficult, situations without the protection of a union. So I think part of that leads to that sort of us versus them mentality.
Yeah.
Which I don't like that because we do both. And I feel like that has helped us. Understand what the puppeteers are asking for, and then you just do your best to deliver the impossible and live another day.
I guess I should have realized that about the paid difference and like even residuals and things like that that a puppeteer would get, because I have a friend of mine, Crick Killen, worked on Beetlejuice, and he was working on the carnival scene. And they kept coming and asking him, hey, listen, we need you to blow smoke through this thing and this tube, and it's this gag and he kept saying no. And they kept coming back to like, look, he's like, I need to get this ready for the next shot. I don't have time. And so they had somebody else blow the smoke through the tube, who now gets residuals for, essentially puppeting what's her name's throat. Juno, your caseworker. Yeah. So the smoke coming out. And so he gets like residuals for that, and Crit missed out on it. And every time the subject comes up, and I try to bring it up as often as I can, you could see just drawing out of his face. So,
well, that's the benefit of a puppeteer. I mean, a puppet builder learning to puppeteer. Look at, Stan Winston, now Legacy Effects, and how many of their top builders are puppeteers as well. Mm-hmm. And they're good puppeteers. And they're creature puppeteers, which is a whole nother skill in itself, right?
Yeah.
And, they not only do they get to build that dinosaur, but then they got to bring it to life on set. And in a way, the performing is perhaps sometimes even the reason why to take a job like that.
And also, working in a shop environment, you're always playing with what you're building anyway. Like you're trying it out. How's this going to work? You're blah, blah, blah. And I know there's this feeling of like, well, I built it, so I know how it works best. And I might feel to a puppeteer who's showing up with a script the first day might feel like, well, no, I know what's best because I went to Juilliard. But I actually do feel there are those times when the person who is in the shop with it all the time really does know how to use it best because they've been doing it for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And they're the ones when the director came in, moved, and the director's like, that's great. That's going to be good. That's going to be good. So there is a value and an intimacy and a knowledge that the builders really know this thing from the inside out. And I think some of the best creature stuff that we've all enjoyed as kids and even now, is being done and being performed by the people who made them in the shop.
Or there was a real building along with it. So
yeah, a relationship is always, that's another way to do it. Bring the puppeteer in early.
That's what never happens because of the way films are budgeted, and there's really all the money that used to be for pre-production is now in post-production because there's so much digital work. But it used to be, you know, in the world where, you know, you would be working on the puppet, the puppeteers would come in, they would try it, the builders would go, okay, got it, let's do a fitting. I mean, that's why the Muppets look so good and work so good. Because, first of all, they've got the joy of having one character they get to build over 30 years and go, now we can make this small tweak and make it even better. Or, you know, if we do this, we can make it even better. They get to adjust to us. Like, the Gonzo we see isn't a prototype. It's, like, evolved from these. And also, the performer is the performer, and it's that same performer all the time.
Yeah.
A lot of times you're making something and the puppeteer isn't even chosen yet.
Right.
You know, you don't know who it's going to be until the day they show up on set. What am I doing? You know, oh, who are you? But whereas, you know, the Muppets and Sesame Street, where you have these set characters performed by the same puppeteer for years and years and years and years, when they put that thing on, it's like putting on those tennis shoes.
Yeah.
You know, after you tried on the new shoes, you're like, I guess they're comfortable. And then you put your old shoes on to walk out the shoe store, and you're like, ooh, my old shoes are so nice. That's the situation they get to have with this puppet that is formed to
And
them.
again, what you're saying is it does come down to budgeting projects because, believe it or not, when that puppeteer is coming in that day to try the puppet out, he's not going to be coming in, or she's not going to be coming in for free.
Yeah,
there's going to be a price tag,
rehearsal fee or whatever.
Yeah, so the best ones are when you can have a real relationship between builder performer. Then that true marriage on screen can happen.
Gotcha.
And we could talk for 3 more hours about that.
I'm all excited about that. You guys have no idea. Like, it is difficult when you're talking to people who aren't in the know about, you know, certain aspects. Like, for instance, we were talking about cost before. You're budgeting in something like fur, and, you know, everyone knows you're most likely going to go with NFT fur because it's like the best out there, and you're going to get all this really great stuff, you know, and, you know, the 4-way stretch and all that. And they don't understand the price that NFT fur is sold by the square foot, not the square yard. And you're likely to pay anywhere from $50 a square foot to $150 a square foot, depending upon the color, the type. And then there's that whole thing called, you know, about fur direction. You know, you just don't cut things linearly. You cut them in the direction of the fur. So there is a ton of waste, you know.
Yes.
So, I mean.
And also with a fur like NFTs, the NFT fur, not NFTs as in NFTs, but anyway.
Yeah, I know.
Not NFT as in where Sean lost all of his money. No.
Ouch.
No, never got into that.
Just kidding.
I stick with real world. There's turnaround time with their
the milling of it.
Yeah, you know, if you're getting not an off the shelf fur from them, but you're actually getting like a milled fur, there's turnaround time for them to create it and ship it to you.
And we have done projects. What's that?
The setup fee, the turnaround time, the shipping.
So many of the puppets that we're building, the furs that we use on average are stuff that we buy like downtown LA, Fabric District, things like that. The kind of the faux acrylic furs. Now we have had opportunities to use the NFT fur for various projects as well. But and I know the quality of it.
Every little scrap we have samples.
Yeah. They sent us samples, you know, like the sample book. We use those samples for little hair bobs and doodads on puppets.
Don't tell them that. Don't tell them that.
Oh, we don't use those. We only use them to look at.
I know.
Usually.
Because if I ask for samples, they have it in their registry. They're like, we sent you that sample already, so you already have it. And it's like, well, if you used it for something, you're screwed, you know. But at the same time, they taught me a trick that you guys probably already know. I did a Dragon Con with those guys, and we did this big fur workshop, and you know they were giving us little insider things like sewing your scraps together to then recreate a full square of fur, and I've done it a million times myself, thinking, oh, I'm being really cheap and pathetic here, but it needs to be done. And then I've got the manufacturer telling me, no, that's a viable way of doing it. Put all your scraps together, just sew them together and cut it again for new patterns. But
yeah, we've done that, not necessarily with NFTs, but for different colors of fleece or furs that, sometimes you have a material in a bin that's perfect for the project, but you only have ends and pieces, and you can Frankenstein something together, believe it or not, in more ways than you might be thinking.
Oh yeah.
And I've been able to eke things out to the inch of my life. Okay, we got it.
That's when you hope they don't. You hope they don't want another one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. Well, and and then there's for me, it's difficult to find fur. Like you guys were saying about the fabric district. I personally don't have access to it because of where I'm at. But if you go online, I feel like you kind of get lied to about the pile. How long it is. And sometimes you're getting shorter than you want. I can never really get it as long as I need unless I'm going to NFT.
Yeah.
But
it's always shorter. It's always shorter.
Yeah,
it's true. So sometimes what we'll do is, if we're shopping for a project and we just happen to see another fur that's perfect for something that we don't know what it is yet, just get a yard of it. Just get a yard of that.
Yeah,
and now we have bins of furs. And when we do a project and someone comes to us and says, okay, here's this project, we go, the first thing we do is go through our bins and see what do we already have that could be perfect for this project. And then, present that material. And then we start shopping.
Gotcha.
Because if you have something in stock, the other thing we've learned is when we do a mock-up, what we'll do is find the material first and then base the color off the mock-up. Especially when you're dealing with furs. Furs do come in set colors. I mean, there are ways to dye them, but it's not really. Yeah. You can paint them.
Especially in our world of kind of more brighter colored, out of the realistic creature zone and more into the colorful zone.
So you sort of set with a texture and a color. I mean, there are things you can do, but so what we try to do is get out of this, the Photoshop slider where it's well, it's not salmon, it's salmony melon.
Yeah. I can't even do that. I'm colorblind. What? I can't even do that.
Really?
I stick with
right.
I mean, number one, I've got my wife on hand most times to tell me how I've screwed up a paint job, but even any kind of fur or something, trying to match them up, it looks like it blends to me, but it doesn't blend at all.
Because the tone might be the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Or something to that effect. But yeah, so you guys are talking about making sure you get that right color. I mean, hell, I have to rely basically on the manufacturer to give me exactly what I've asked for because I can't see otherwise. It's
interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's something that would definitely be a challenge. But what we try to do is bring it to the real world as much as possible. So if something is designed in the computer, or if we're designing a character in the computer, what we'll do, in fact, Patrick just did it. He photographed the fur and then brought that fur into Photoshop and then just made that the
and
actual.
Use the fur on the design. Like this.
And sometimes we'll find one online and do the same thing. But that way we're not trying to go, okay, how do we find a material that doesn't exist?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's where NFT does come in because they make furs that don't exist.
And that's basically it. They really do. And the backing of the fur is so much nicer.
Yeah, it's like pizza dough.
Exactly. Well, even their stationary stuff, when you're looking at their stationery, sometimes you'll get, and I'm just generalizing when I say fun fur, but when you get it from, say, Amazon or wherever, and the backing is rough and it's stiff and there's
cardboard.
Oh yeah, but it didn't look like that in the photo.
No, of course not.
those are some issues that you have to work around. I just say,
and we remember furs used to be a lot better when we were younger building puppets. We didn't know how good we had it. We had access to Antron fleece. We had access to these furs that were being manufactured without all
minky.
That minky. You cut it, the fibers go everywhere, and it frays immediately.
Yeah, if you were to actually get all your old stuffed animals and cut them apart, you'd have better fur to work with than anything you can find in the store today.
Yeah.
That's just so ridiculous. But you're right, yeah.
Better materials, yeah. Or even fashion furs from the 70s, a material called flocati, which doesn't exist anymore. It was a fashion. You'd see like some Twiggy in a fur coat or something. It was usually going to be Flicati or the original Ugg boots or whatever, or faux rugs. Lean on
some mandolin player laying on a faux rug in front of a fireplace.
Yeah, there's a Flicati everywhere, and all the Muppets are Ralph and
Fozzie and Cookie Monster,
Grover, all that like great fur that looks a little like it's like they've been a little distressed, but it still has texture and
rich color,
and you can dye it any color you want it, and they just don't make it anymore. It just doesn't exist because it was a fashion fur that just went out of style.
That's why you can look at Fozzie Bear now and Fozzie Bear from the 80s and go, what's different about him? It's the fur's different.
Yeah.
The whole point of the podcast is to educate new artists,
Great.
But I want them to be aware of the good and the bad, So, like, if you guys were talking to a new artist, what's some advice that you would give them on the darker side of the industry and, maybe how they could get their foot in the door?
Okay. So, first of all, like I said before, this is an industry based on relationships. So you need to start to know people, and it's important how they know you. So sometimes like who you know gets you in the door, but what you know will then take over. So because this is an industry based, and you can't control where it's going, because this is an industry based on relationships, be aware that what you say and matters, and the relationship you have with people matters, and it's better to be known as someone who is hardworking, respected, and liked than someone who has the best story about this person, because it will get back to them.
And shops, man,
people love to talk.
They love to gossip, and it's hard. You're sitting there 8 hours a day, stitching or gluing or painting or whatever you're doing, and little mouths start to go. And so you just want to be very aware of what you're saying to who and when.
Better to be the observer of the story than the
spreader of it.
Gotcha.
And early on, people like to know. They like to be in the know. Right. So a lot of people may not understand that it's a small community. Everybody knows each other. And so they might go, hey, I heard from so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. It's like, dude.
What do you mean? Yeah, that's my brother.
Yeah. Whoops.
What the hell?
Ed Kyoto had a great thing that he said to us. And basically the idea is you want to be nice to everybody. So that's a way to avoid the darker part of the temptation to be in the know, to be the gossip, to be the one that everybody likes. You have all the good stories, but what if you fall out of favor? And then suddenly you're on the outs, but you have good stories. But Ed would say, he said, be nice to everyone when they're on their way up, because you will be working for them when you're on your way down.
Yeah.
And how often has it been where, like Sean says about the entertainment industry, no one is where they want to be. Every actor wants to be a director. Every producer wants to be a studio head. Every PA, wants to be a camera operator. Everyone's working toward. They're all climbing up a different set of stairs. So it's very common for someone to show up on set, and you work that PA, and you as a PA, someone shows up, gets your coffee for you, and blah 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 blah. There's a very good chance that person's going to be script supervisor. Well, that person's going to be eventually director or producer. Just like working in a shop. There's the guy who's, maybe just mixing paint or cleaning molds or whatever. Well, maybe 10 years from now, that person is running the shop, running their own shop. And so the best thing you can do is be a person who's good to work with, who is willing to learn, and best not to be someone sharing the tales, maybe absorbing them, because there are lessons to be learned from the gossip, but just be good to work with.
And then the other thing, which is sort of basic, which is be on time, be professional.
Yeah.
And like they say, if you're early, you're on time.
If you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. If you're late, you're fired.
Yeah. That was the military when I was in.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's why, regardless, I'm 15 minutes early. It's just, it's now in my, I cannot be on time.
What branch of the service did you?
It was Air Force. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I had a blast in the service, but it did take 10 years away from creature design. So that was that,
But I can only imagine that what you gain from it are lessons that can then be applied to whatever field you're working in.
Yeah, for the most part, you know, I definitely loved my time in the service, but it was a guilt trip. You know, my grandfather heard I wanted to be a special effects artist, and he's like, he's gonna die pouring a ditch somewhere, you know. So he guilted me into something. It was either accounting or the military, and there's no way in hell I was gonna be an accountant, which is what my wife does, you know. But you know, yeah. So I went to the military. I actually enjoyed it, so I stayed in for about 10 years and then got out, and that was the reason for my delayed, you know, introduction into all of this was.
Well, didn't you say something about that? Because so we're in a world now where everyone does what they want to do without going through what they have to do first. And what I mean is, when Walt Disney built Disneyland, he didn't go to designers. He went to civic engineers. He went to electricians. He went to airline.
He went to people who designed vehicles in the real world, people who designed cars, people who, you know.
Right. So these people had real world experience.
People who had actually traveled and seen the globe.
Right. They brought a perspective that was unique to them, unique to their industry, and then made Disneyland. Now we have a time where people study design. So they're not studying, you know, real sewage systems in actual cities, and they're not designing real transit systems. They're designing design.
Yeah.
And so you get the Marvel movies that look like no one would ever build that in a million years, whereas in Star Wars and Star Trek, you go like, oh yeah, I feel like I could walk through that door.
Sometimes what's missing is a foundation in the real world. So a real world experience is worth more than just dipping your head into fantasy and being inspired just by what other people have made.
Yeah,
I think.
I see that. Yeah.
It almost becomes like AI derivative, you know. It's like, oh yeah, you want you know, that's why everything looks the same.
Yeah.
Because nowadays things are inspired by other things instead of being inspired by real world or being inspired by
real experiences.
Yeah. Anyway.
So I think
another theory of mine.
Well, I guess the way of saying is you're never too late to start, because when you are starting later, you're bringing with you more of a foundation of real world.
Yeah.
You've actually traveled. You've actually worked in different environments. You've had to work with different people.
Worked on teams.
You've actually been in actual stressful situations, not just like the director's ready for you now. It's like, okay, well, this is not life or death. You know. So I mean, obviously, I don't know what that experience was like for you because I've never served in the military, but what I'm saying is you are actually bringing something, whether you know it or not, to any job that is going to be 100% different than most of the people you're working with, and there's value to that.
Even if it's just you're the only guy that shows up on time.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if that's the only thing you learn.
Russ is so pathetic. He's always on time. You can count on that bastard. You know,
like I said, anyone who's late, I would say, like, honestly,
I would take someone who is less skilled and reliable than the best person at their job, and you don't know if they're going to show up.
Yeah.
I can say about on a movie set, being late has a gravity towards it, around it. Like, if everyone shows up on time, it's great. But the person who's late, suddenly everything starts to orbit around this. And what you don't want to be is the person that everyone's orbiting around.
Yeah.
When's he going to be here? What's his thing? Can we call him? I tried him. We can't reach him. You know, don't be that guy.
Yeah, exactly. And know where you're supposed to be. Always.
Yeah.
Like, I don't float around the set. You know, I don't go over to watch the actors do their thing. I know where I'm supposed to be, and I'm putting the creature together. I also know that I hate being on set.
but also you wouldn't want the actor hovering over you. Like,
exactly.
What are you doing here? Like, I'm just interested. And you're like, I'm trying to finish this.
You also never want to be the person they're looking for. Well, where are they?
Yeah.
You just want to be where you're expected to be.
Yeah, communications are key in environments like that.
Yeah.
If you need to leave, you're on set, you need to leave, find a PA. Hey, I need to go, blah, blah, blah. And they go, great, so-and-so. You're like, okay.
Yeah. So all that being said is no one's ever too late to start in a creative venture, in a creative field. There is no I'm 10 years late for this. You know, look at actors who won Oscars in their 80s. Like, they're probably thinking, oh, finally, I've been doing this since I was 25 years old. No one knew my name. You know?
One thing that I often will think about, like, you know, hear a lot of people talk about retirement. I've never met a retired puppeteer. Because I feel like people just die at their workbench.
Yeah.
They do. It's the barge.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I'm talking about people that are, you know, even, you know, weathered and old, that like just keel over one day.
Yeah.
Because they're doing what they love.
Yeah.
this is not a job that's
It's kind of a self-selecting field. People who are
Yeah.
doing this work have to do it.
And that is a piece of advice I would give is don't do it if you can do something else.
Yeah.
If you can, there are way easier ways to make money than making puppets.
Any
Way
art
easier.
form. I mean, honestly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Acting, dance, theater, perform,
If you're
whatever
not-
it is.
If you're not drawn to it, if you're not committed to it, don't do it. There's lots of other things you can do.
Like we said, rarely do you ever meet a puppeteer who's like, I don't know. They're always like, they're like in it. They are passionate.
Yeah.
Puppetry just kind of fell into it. Where you can meet a lawyer whose heart isn't into it, but that's not been my experience with puppeteers.
That's funny that you brought up lawyer. I actually, so when I got my master's I got my bachelor's in English, and then I went and I got my master's. I was supposed to go to law school because, I really love constitutional law, but I got so burned out in my, my undergraduate that I just couldn't do it. So like I almost sealed my own fate into art, with that master's in literature that is completely useless. Completely useless,
Although I bet maybe, I don't know. I mean, I have a feeling that stuff probably gets drawn on more than you would know. I mean, maybe even if it's just how you filled out your submission form for Creature Shop Challenge. Like there are ways that we don't know how our history is actually helping our present.
Pete Brook liked it. Like when we were doing the Minotaur and he was talking, he's like, I just found out that you have a master's in literature. I'm like, it's pretty useless. I'm sorry.
But that makes it interesting to him. It's like Walt Disney learning that, I don't know, I used to design automobiles. Oh, I need that. I actually need that. I don't know. I think it's good. You bring it. You bring you, and that's an asset.
I appreciate your emotional support. And if I had your phone numbers, I would call you regularly to say, hey, I need a boost, guys.
It's because we're twins. We're used to it.
Look, here's the thing. I've never met a shy twin, and I've never met a twin who wasn't confident. Because imagine if you had growing up from day one, a best friend, an adversary, an advocate, all the way up until adulthood. That's enough to give you,
Oh, boy, look at me.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I mean, my brother and sister are just regular brothers and sisters, so I can't tell you how many times we try to off each other just in the growing up. Like I think it's been 20 years since I've talked to either one of them, and it's not on purpose. It's just sort of like, I got better things to do.
Well, it's like siblings. So we have two sisters as well, not twins, but I see Patrick every day. And then I'll see text my one sister occasionally and see the other one, less frequently. You just kind of have different relationships with different people.
I think it's cool that you guys are twins and both interested in the exact same thing. Like, and you're a team in that business, because the few twins that I've ever met have been like completely different. So, I mean, there are the similarities, but I mean, one wants to be the actor while the other one wants to drive a truck. I mean, there's just like so different in most ways. But.
Well, one thing I tell people is just from our own experience, I say, find your twin. It doesn't have to be a biological twin, but find your twin, because, you're stronger together.
Yeah. There's a lot of this work is really hard to do. And if you have someone else there to kind of balance it out a little bit, and pick up pieces, or you pick up their pieces, then you actually can start moving things along.
I honestly, I marvel at people who are independent operators, because I've never been that, so I just I don't even know how that is done. And I'm like, wow,
sucks.
I can imagine, because how do you even get up and say, okay, I'm going to face the day, and it's going to be me and me. That's got to be.
It is. It
tough.
sucks. It sucks. I mean, it's great when your spouse is supportive, but even then, you're still going in it completely alone. So.
Yeah. No, so I suggest people find their twin. Your twin is still out
Embrace the collaborative art form of puppetry and find someone else to work with, even if it's just someone come in for a week, a day, a month, a year, whatever.
Yeah, mine was Lex for the longest time. Then she moved back to England. So
Yeah, she's in England now.
Yeah. Oddly, we both had kids at the same time. Like her daughter Eleanor is a month older than my daughter. They were both born in 2020. And then the pandemic hit. So we were we were all like, we're all in lockdown, can't go anywhere with a brand new baby. Yeah, so
It's the worst. It's the worst.
It really
yeah.
is.
I don't
But
want to go back.
well, I'll let you guys off the hook. I thank you guys so much for taking out the time to talk to me and everybody else about the process, and
Thank you
Yeah,
so
thanks
much.
for having
Good
us.
to see you again.
I know. I
And,
feel like such a dick that I was like,
That's all right.
because I've been so excited about talking to you guys. Like, I mean, my wife's even like, oh my God, yes, you're going to do the pie. I'm like, but it's the guys from Swazzle, and she's like, I don't understand what that means, and here I had worked with, Sean. Did I meet you at all, Patrick, or did I?
No, I didn't have any interaction with anyone on that show.
It was probably best.
But he saw you in his living room.
But I saw you at home, so I feel like I know you. It's
And-
kind of interesting.
Please say hello to your wife for me, because I mean,
Sure, of course.
I feel honored that she remembered me.
Yeah.
So
Well, speaking of that, I'll say one thing that's sort of funny. We were, speaking of being remembered, we were at another thing, and someone's like, "Oh, what are you up to?" I said, "Well, like work stuff." It's like, "Yeah, you working on anything that's gonna make you famous?" And I said, "If the projects we've done hasn't made us famous yet, then the answer is no."
I mean, damn.
And the Patrick goes, "There's one famous puppeteer," and we figured out there's probably 3 famous puppeteers: with Jim Henson, Edgar Bergen, and Sherry Lewis. And then other than that,
Well, Frank
Rest
Oz,
not.
maybe.
sure,
Yeah.
I'll put Frank Oz, but people know Jim Henson's name.
Yeah,
like,
no,
"Hey."
yeah.
And they go, "Frank Oz, who's that?" "Oh, puppeteer." "Oh, yeah, Yoda, yeah." He's famous for his character.
Yeah, I remember
Marvel.
Frank Oz. I think it was Spies Like Us. Like, that's every time I hear his name, that's the first place I remember him, and it shouldn't be because
He'd show up in all those little movies. Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, it was great chatting with you, and yeah, if you're open to doing this.
And I'd like to thank Sean and Patrick for coming out and talking to us about their industry. There's a lot more to puppet design than it seems. I'd like to thank our friends over at the Collector's Maze Network. If you're looking for a group of podcasts in the geek realm, then look no further than the Collector's Maze Network. As of right now, there are at least a dozen geek-related podcasts just waiting for you to check out. I would also like to thank my friend Gil Corzo for supplying the Creator's Crypt with our theme music. This podcast was recorded on Riverside FM and edited on DaVinci Resolve.